The story is true. 3 guys walked into a gym, and I was one of them. One was Bernard Cooper, and he's a super big deal. And then there was another fellow, and we put on a show of 3 stories some 8 years ago. And was very well received. So I said, let's do it again. And Bernard is like, I'm too important. So we found other people. And then I turned to the other guy and I said, do you want to do it? He's like, yeah. And he came back and he told the same story. Because it turns out he only had one story. So when it came time to do Strong Words 3, I said, you can't tell the same story again, right? So he kind of went on his own. And then he posted on Facebook. He was like, I'm telling my story at a different event, and it's not all vaudeville like Strong Words. Vaudeville, what does that even mean? Like, yeah, that I read. And I looked it up, and you know what vaudeville means? Voices of the city. Did you notice our tagline? Strong Words, Voices of the City. Thanks. And let me tell you, we started going out into the city and, we found a German American and we found a Lebanese Dominican American, and she's coming up later, and a Filipino American and a Syrian American, and they're all on the program, and a hillbilly American. And when you watch the slideshow in a little bit, you're going to see Japanese Americans and Irish Americans and Jewish Americans and Toledo Americans. They're all here. And you know what they all have in common? They all have a library card. And they're also all Americans. He's my favorite Filipino American, and he's just joined our family a year ago. And we're so happy to have him, and you're so lucky to hear him. Please welcome Roy Cruz.
Hi, and welcome to the library. Please be quiet. I met Rusty on Grindr. An English professor in a small liberal arts college, 50s, handsome, and has a linebacker build. We preferred to meet up for dinner rather than hook up right away. After a couple of text messages, we decided to go on a dinner date. We met up at a diner in Los Feliz. The waitress came to take our orders. He ordered cheeseburger and fries, and when the waitress asked mine, I said, tuna melt. As the waitress took down our orders, Rusty asked me if Tagalog, the Filipino language, is an inflective language. I couldn't answer that because to me the word inflective means uptalk or the proverbial valley girl accent. Rusty gave me an impression of intelligence and erudition, which I found very sexy. And then he said, can you say tuna melt again? So I did, tuna melt. He corrected me. There is no inflection in tuna melt. It felt like a Henry Higgins Eliza Doolittle moment. I thought it was romantic. He was hot, and I wouldn't mind if the evening turned into a musical. Then he said, remember, no inflection, so say it again. Oh. So when he corrected me the second time, he sounded frustrated. My heart felt cold, and at that moment, I realized that Rusty is a bitch. The excitement turned sour, and even though the food hasn't arrived yet, it already left a bad taste in the mouth. I could tell that he was going to ask me to say tuna melt again, so I stopped him. And I said, are you going to correct me every time I say a word because I'm about to say the word motherfucker? Before he could explain himself, our food came. The dinner was silent for the most part because I was so afraid that I would put the inflections in wrong places. So I didn't want to make the scene, so I just tried my best to move from one topic to the next topic, even though I had a burning desire to smother Rusty's face with tuna salad and all of its omega fats. Rusty tried to share some trivia about the English language, like the difference between phrases, "it begs the question" and "it raises the question." But at that point, I didn't care if he asks or begs for my attention. After dinner, we said our goodbyes and we parted ways with a handshake. I got home feeling disappointed, and I was determined to not let Rusty's fastidiousness ruin my evening. It was still early, so I decided to go on Grindr. Because the evening might turn up in my favor, I updated my profile to make it more captivating. I wrote Asian, speaks English, Tagalog, French, and Spanish, no racial hang-ups, and can go from mild to wild in a New York minute. I'm an alternative-looking artist who's into cranberries, cake, and spoon. These are the bands that I like. I always like to let people know of my music preference. It gives guys a clue on your cultural capital. I've been swiping for about 15 minutes and was not getting any messages. I have a rule when cruising on with hookup apps. If in half an hour no deal has been broken, I'm gonna be spending the night with Hulu or the Dr. Oz podcast. Looking for sex is just like looking for parking. When you don't need it, it's everywhere. But when you desperately want it, you just gotta valet. On the 28th minute, I heard a notification, that ping I've been waiting for. I looked at his profile. His username is Sam323. Picture is handsome, shirtless, at the top of Runyon Canyon. And the profile says, into older guys, love smooth skin. And among his interests is going to Coachella. He messaged me, wanna play? I messaged back, sure, I can host. So after giving him my address, I prepped the apartment for an evening of validation. I tidied up the apartment, arranged my art books side by side with gay literature and veganism. Then I set the lights. Lighting is an important element. It must be flattering, preferably matching the Hudson filter on Instagram. Finally, the secret sauce of the evening, the music playlist. A booty call requires curated music. Songs must follow the arc of the evening's sensuous narrative. So no Madonna, no Whitney, no Ariana, or it can turn your partner into a pumpkin seed. Instead, start with some classic rock, then Wu-Tang Clan, and once you're airborne, 9 Inch Nails. And that's what I call the fuck playlist. So Sam323 texted me on my way. The less words, the better. At exactly half an hour later, I heard a knock on the door, and when I opened, I saw the most beautiful Middle Eastern man. I offered to shake my hand, and I said, "Hi, I'm Roy." When it was his turn, he just kissed me and said in a muffled voice, "I'm Sam, and I'm deaf." I was pleasantly flabbergasted. I didn't know how to react. I was never taught the etiquette in receiving deaf visitors. So I just smiled and kissed him back. I showed him in. I started to get anxious on how we were going to communicate. I knew it was only sex, but Sam was unique, and I was determined to make the evening unforgettable. He showed me his phone, and I showed mine, and looked at each other, and together we launched WhatsApp. And we began to text each other. I learned that he was born in Israel, raised in Colombia, and now lives in La Cañada. I told him I'm from the Philippines. I've lived in Hollywood for 25 years, but people think I live in Echo Park. When he asked me if he could use my charger, that was the cue to take him to the bedroom. But first, I motioned him to wait for a second. I was going to tell Alexa to play the fuck list when I realized, oh my God, he's deaf. He's not gonna care what I play. So I yelled at Alexa, Alexa, play Liza Minnelli live at the Winter Garden. The overture was sensational. The perfect soundtrack for foreplay, a prelude to an evening of quiet passion. The carnal desire was deafening. There's an added layer when there are no words spoken during lovemaking. Eyes are wide open when you kiss, and you can feel the temperature of the muscles singing. And when it gets rough, the language of the vial is transmitted by slapping and spanking. If you want to slow down, there is no safe word, just a gentle squeeze. And I usually play the role of the receiver in bed. And I play it in different angles, so I should be making louder sounds. Sometimes, though, making sounds can turn off your partner, so I keep it to a minimum, and usually with masculine groans. When I lied on my stomach, I assumed my favorite pose. I started making noises. I started talking like a girl and screamed, "Help me! Help me! There's a mercenary in my bed and he's assaulting me." So after juicing the last grapefruit for my greyhound, we both smiled and gave each other the succulent looks of gratification. I knew the pillow conversation would never happen, and that's the downside of hooking up with a deaf guy. I'm not the only one with needs. So I took out my sketchbook and drew a portrait of him. I drew him slowly while he stared at the dimly lit lamp on the nightstand. As I smudged the charcoal on the sketchpad, I could hear Liza singing Cabaret on the background. I showed him the finished picture and he gave me a thumbs up. We said our goodbye with a little lesson in sign language. I got a text from him an hour later saying how much he enjoyed the evening, and I texted back, "Me too." A couple of weeks later, I saw Sam again on Grindr. I hit him up. "Hey Sam, it's me. Wanna play?" And Sam's answer was, "I don't do repeats." I was disappointed. I liked Sam. He made me appreciate silent lovemaking. I was going to message back to say, "Hit me up anytime you change your mind." But before I could do it, he blocked me. I never heard from him again. Recently, though, I went to another app, Adam for Adam. While browsing in the hope of finding Sam, I get a message from Cute Cub in LBC. "Hey Roy, Cute Cub." I didn't recognize the picture until I looked closely. Oh, it's Rusty. He apologized for the awkward dinner date we had, and before I could respond, he asked, "Do you want to play?" I said, "No, I'm sick with sinus inflection." Thank you.